Hello, everybody. Welcome to CoinFund Q&A. Today we have Mike Golden and Mark D'Agostino. We talk about AdChain. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. We also have James Young from MetaX just hopped on.
James Young just joined. Hi, James. Welcome. James, can you hear us? Okay. Mike, do you want to give us a quick overview of the project? Mike is calling in from the consensus office over in Bushwick.
Yeah, so I'll give a little preface to what motivated the project. So if you're an advertiser and you serve ads over the web, you're probably serving ads programmatically, meaning that you go through an exchange. The exchange is going to match your bids with bid requests, and the exchange is like a black box for you. So if you are doing about as well as the average advertiser, probably between 10 and 30% of your ad spend is just being stolen by bot farms. So this is like a $20 billion a year number. The reason this happens is that if I am a website operator, I can buy an impression from a bot farm for half a penny, and then I can get paid to serve that impression for 75 for a penny. So it's economically rational for people downstream from advertisers to buy bot traffic, over-report impressions, and all this stuff. So there's really no way to detect this. It's just an impossible Turing test for code to figure out what is a human and what is a robot on a web page, because the way your mouse moves and the way you scroll the page is just very easy to imitate. There's no objective way to figure out what's a human and what's a bot. So one very kind of old-fashioned but reliable way of reducing the amount of your ad spend that gets stolen is just to whitelist websites. So you might buy a whitelist from a vendor, or you might have your intern put together a whitelist, and you just say, okay, we're basically only going to serve ads to websites that we've heard of, essentially. So whitelists are kind of the best thing out there right now. What AdChain is a decentrally curated whitelist. So it's a whitelist that's curated using an incentive game. So there's a token called AdToken, where basically people put tokens at stake to apply to the registry. Token holders can challenge their applications. If a challenge happens, a vote occurs. And there's an incentive loop such that token holders are incentivized to do the best diligence possible on applicants to the registry, such that advertisers will want to pay a premium for those CPMs, more publishers will want to apply. It's like a virtuous cycle for everyone. So AdChain is a decentralized whitelist. It's actually quite simple in that sense.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that description. Let's unpack that a bit, because there was a lot of information there. So if we zoom out a little bit, right? So there's typically a couple of players in this system, right? There's sort of web real estate, like blogs and different websites that monetize by creating areas on their pages where ads are served. Then there are advertisers who wish to serve ads because that gives them an ROI. They will promote products, and then people will buy those products and make revenue. And then there are these systems that sort of are marketplaces between the eyeballs looking at the ads, the attention economy, and connecting the advertisers and ads. So what you guys are kind of saying is that there's a bunch of fraud that goes on. And the fraud is that if I am a property owner and I'm serving ads, well, I have a strong incentive to hire a bunch of basically automated programs out of wherever in the world to come and just do these sort of fake clicks on my ad, so I make money. And what did you say? What was the fraud margin on that?
So it's $20 billion a year, according to the IAB, which is the industry's own lobbying group or advocacy group. So you might think that, given that number comes from the industry itself, it's probably even conservative. Realistically, one might guess it's between 10 and 30%, perhaps as much as 50% of ad spend is being stolen. Nobody really knows, but it's a huge number, tens of billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. So in fact, it could be that, as someone who wants to advertise a product, I pay a certain rate, but I'm actually only getting half of the value, right? So I'm actually paying twice as much to get the same ROI. And
Yeah.
going into the whitelist, like how exactly does that work? You're saying, what does it mean that I'm whitelisting websites that are?
Yeah, sure. So without getting into how the incentive game works, we can discuss that next. But like the way it works, if you're an advertiser, is so there's a technology called header bidding in ad tech. This is something that exists independently of blockchains. Header bidding is basically like a peer-to-peer process with which publishers can connect with advertisers and cut out exchanges out of the supply chain. Header bidding currently makes up like 5%, a relatively small amount of the programmatic ad market. The reason being, advertisers trust their exchanges to some extent to like filter the supply that they match their bids with. The problem is the incentives are all messed up. Exchanges get paid on a volume basis. Exchanges have no incentive not to admit like bad ad networks and bot farms into their supply pools. But the reason that people haven't really adopted header bidding is that it's easy to spoof origin headers. So if I get like a bid request from some person I've never heard of, I'm going to drop it because like it's probably a bot farm. What we can do when we have like a decentralized, like open and permanent whitelist is you get a bid request if you're an advertiser from xyz.com. You've never heard of them. You can then ask them to mutually authenticate with you using MTLS, same as like SSH or whatever. We're not inventing anything new here. They can sign a message to you using their HTTPS certificate's signing key, and then you can verify, oh, I'm actually talking to the New York Times, and furthermore, the New York Times is on this whitelist. So you have this simple binary signal that this website is like of a certain level of quality. So that's like how it works for advertisers. It's just like a whitelist. You could like cache it in your server and use it however you use your current whitelist.
Gotcha. And so Mike and James, how did you guys get into this? Did you work in the advertising or the ad tech industry previously? Like you seem to be quite knowledgeable about this market.
Do you want to tell us your story, James?
Sure. My name is James Young. Hey, Joe.
This is Joe Lubin back here.
Working at a company called Bidroll at the time, and we were trying to understand how we could provide some mechanism that allows for auditing. And what we originally were thinking was, the blockchain would be great at doing this in terms of putting things in a public ledger. And I was very naive because I did not come from it with this crypto background. And so we were looking at and researching a lot of things. This was a year and a half, 2 years ago. I looked at, AdChain DB, Tendermint, a bunch of these different type of blockchains. And then through your growth at Microsoft, we were connected with Consensus. And from there, it was just, going down the rabbit hole of smart contract blockchain. And it was this mind meld of, Consensus and Mike leading the charge on the technical side to understand online advertising and how it worked, and then me trying to catch up as fast as I could, understanding, all the things that blockchains entail. And like the more I learn, I feel like the less I know because it branches out so wide and deep. That's how we met and got together and worked together. Mike flew out. He, I think, missed like Thanksgiving and Christmas because he was at our offices. So he flew from New York to LA, and it was just every day, just going through iterations and learning, and trying to figure out, how do we create a system that is decentralized, that allows for the reduction of fraud. And I think after a lot of talking, it was this economic perspective. We had a bunch of different technical solutions, and we thought of it as a technical problem initially. But then when we looked at it, we needed to get out of the direct CPM revenue stream in order to be able to have different incentives. So we thought long and hard. We went through many iterations. Mike's done a great job, catching up and learning, and he's very eloquent and can speak to online advertising very well. That's kind of how
so I didn't know anything about ad tech before we got Consensus got hooked up with MetaX through a mutual friend at Microsoft. I flew out to LA. I spent like 6 months there. We spent the first 4 months just like totally doing the wrong thing. We spent the first 4 months designing an extremely complicated system where we basically tried to put like the entire RTB bidding infrastructure onto a blockchain. And it was like this, it basically wound up being like an insurance scheme, and it was like super complicated, and it was like, it had all sorts of problems in the end. So we like nuked that idea, started from scratch about 4 months in. And actually wound up being inspired by work being done around like Casper and proof of stake systems, where token holders do subjective work, if you will, to verify things, and wound up, designing a far simpler system, like way less involved, and which has a few interesting properties. So I have like a manifesto for crypto systems. Like when I'm looking at a token, I ask myself, does it like meet the requirements of my manifesto? So I say, in my own personal opinion, a token must be a necessary element of a self-sustaining system, which is a public utility. And so what I mean by that is a token would be a necessary element if removing the token would damage the system's normal functioning. A system is self-sustaining if its creators can disappear forever, and the system would continue to still work normally. And the system is a public utility if it's permissionless, rent-free, and creates some useful output. So what we wound up developing with AdChain is something where once it's deployed, Consensus and MetaX can like fall off the face of the earth. The system continues to work as a closed-loop economic game. So we wound up designing a system that meets those requirements.
I just want to pause there for a second, because I think that's really interesting, and this, admittedly is not directly related to the project, but it's interesting from a general standpoint about evaluating tokens. So in your criteria there, that removing the token from the system would damage it. So if I gave you the following example, like let's say you have a decentralized storage network, and let's say that network has a token which incentivizes the redundancy of the data in the system. So it kind of like tries to guarantee that the data remains on the network. Is removing that token, does that break your criteria?
It would depend on the details of the system. So I read the Filecoin white paper recently, and they have this like very involved process where like miners are actually doing like special validation that you wouldn't be able to do efficiently on, say, the Ethereum blockchain. They do have their own token. Like I'm not sure. An example that I would give of like a system where a token would not be necessary, but which would meet the other two requirements, for example. So say you have like a simple gambling game or a lottery game. So the way this game would work is there would be numbers 1 through 5, and you vote for a number 1 through 5. You make a choice, you put down a deposit along with your vote. It's like a commit reveal vote. And then at the end of the reveal period, everyone reveals, and the number which got the lowest number of votes, those voters would split the whole pot. So that system satisfies self-sustainability and public utility, but there is no need for a game-specific token. That game would work equally well whether you're playing it with Ether or singles or Bitcoin. Like there would be no need to have like a token specific to that game. So that's an example I use of a system that satisfies two, but not the final criteria.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So let's dive into a little bit more of the technical detail about how AdChain works. So according to your white paper, there's something that's called the AdChain registry, and I'm guessing that this is the principal smart contract that implements your whitelist. So can you talk a little bit about how it works and what the purpose of the token is?
So this is our closed loop incentive game. So there is and we'll start from like a steady state and then like loop back to the beginning to close the incentive loop, just because we have to start somewhere. So we have a list of high quality websites. If you run a website, you want to be on this list because advertisers are paying a premium for CPMs for websites that are on the list. To get on the list, you have to apply. To do this, you purchase ad token on the market and you put down a deposit and you say, hey, I'm applying. The deposit amount is set by a vote of the ad token holders. So ad token holders can like vote to change what this deposit requirement is. Maybe it's $100, maybe it's $1,000. I don't know. The market will decide. So you put down a deposit. A challenge period begins. If you're a high quality site, if you're the New York Times, no rational person is going to challenge you. Once the challenge period ends, you get your deposit back and you get a listing in the registry. So like it costs you nothing except like the cost of capital for the duration of the challenge period. If you are, you know, say crazypartygirls.ru and you apply to the registry and a token holder sees this application and they say to themselves, oh, this is not necessarily, one, it's not a site that, you know, high quality advertisers would want their ads served to. And also it's like potentially a bot farm or a click farm or something like that. You're going to issue a challenge. So what you do there is you put down a matching deposit in ad token. This initiates a challenge. And now the status of the application goes to a vote of ad token holders. So this is a just token weighted vote. So the token holders will do this vote. They decide whether you get in or out. And depending on how the vote goes, one of the deposits gets forfeited. Let's say the challenger won and they're going to kick out the applicant. The challenger gets a special dispensation. It's a percentage set by the token holders. It's a market rate for like issuing the challenge because they put capital at risk. They had risk of like losing their money. And the voters who voted in the winning block, they share the remainder of the forfeit deposit like according to their token weight amongst themselves. Voters in the losing block get nothing. They get their tokens back, but they don't get a reward. And then similarly, if just to prevent a game theoretic edge case, if the publisher wins, we give them a special reward also. So if you are like a token holder who's playing this incentive game, your incentive is to do the best diligence possible and make challenges on sites which apply to the registry, which you think are low quality. Because if this whitelist like becomes less meaningful to advertisers, if advertisers decide, oh, I'm not going to pay a premium for these CPMs anymore because this whitelist sucks, publishers aren't going to apply anymore, and the fundamental demand for the token disappears. So like as a token holder, if you play the game well, you enrich yourself in terms of the number of tokens that you hold, and you also increase demand for the token. So it's like that's how the closed loop incentive game works.
Okay, that's really cool. So it sounds like you know, basically the smart contract is an oracle, right, that determines the qualities of the sites that go into the list, right?
Yeah. So what I like to say is that this is a token which does subjective work. So yeah, the token holders in a decentral way, they are the oracle for is this site high quality or not, which is a subjective thing, but token holders are doing subjective work.
And so do you envision that there is going to be like, you know, there's some objective information out there, which is that, is this site a legitimate site or not, right? And do you think that there's just going to be a few reporters on this network that are going to be like really, really good at telling and proving when a site is a legitimate versus like other holders? Or like, how do you, like, where does that information, how does that information enter the system?
Yeah, so we totally expect that like the composition of the token holder body will change over time and perhaps become professionalized. So right now, where we are in the world, like I said, there's no way to like objectively figure out what's a bot farm or not. Like, nobody has solved this. So we have like this, you know, it's like Mechanical Turk for ad fraud. We just have a bunch of like, you know, random Joe token holders out there looking at sites and making subjective assessments. Okay, this looks high quality or this does not look high quality. So let's say they do like a B- job at that. If you are a, you know, maybe you're an advertiser yourself and you just want to like decide and have a say in the ads you serve, or maybe you're a more sophisticated player in the industry. You're someone like a safety vendor, which is an entity that like deploys JavaScript on page to try to figure out if something is a bot or not. You know, like I said, that kind of devolves to statistical guessing. But if they look at this and they say, oh, wait, this token is, you know, available on the market for 10 cents. I am a sophisticated player. I can play this game better than the current players and take the registry quality from a B- to an A-. You will buy that token, be better at playing the game than anybody else, accrue more tokens for yourself, and you profit that way. So like from the advertiser's perspective, it's like rather than purchasing some whitelist from a vendor, you incentivize all the vendors to like work together and create the best possible whitelist that a rational and free market can create. So yeah, the composition of token holders, I imagine, will change over time. It very well may become professionalized.
Got it. A danger in that kind of voting system, as is always a danger in decentralized systems, is that you'll have some actor that will get a large portion of the supply and then will be able to vote incorrectly, or to whatever is his advantage or her advantage. How does your system deal with that case?
Yeah, so I argue, and I argue strongly, that the security properties of tokens that run on Ethereum are in almost all cases like naturally the same properties, or very similar properties to like the security properties of Casper. So what we're talking about is like a 51% attack or some sort of like majority influencer attack. So let's discuss two different forms of this attack. So one, we have someone who buys a bunch of tokens and like they're not like actively malicious, they're just an idiot and like they're doing a bad job of like curating the registry. In doing that, like the price of the token declines, they eventually exit their position, someone who's not an idiot buys in, and over time the price of the token goes back up. So that's how we solve that. If we have a real like malicious 51% attack, or even just a majority attack, where someone has some like external incentive to destroy this registry, say like Google comes in and they're like, oh, we're a big advertiser, this is a threat to us, we're just gonna like buy all these tokens and try to destroy the thing. What token holders do is they fork the registry. So proof of work systems have no defense against what you might call spawn camping 51% attacks. So someone has a bunch of GPUs, they 51% attack the network, you do a hard fork, they're still out there with their GPUs. You can even change your hashing algorithm, they can buy more GPUs because like their wealth is disconnected from the value of the system that's under attack. When you have a token-weighted consensus mechanism, or a consensus mechanism that uses the token, you can destroy the attacker's weapon in the act of hard forking. Like you hard fork the registry and say, okay, those tokens don't exist. So you as an attacker have spent a huge amount of money to like momentarily disrupt the system because supply tightens so much after the hard fork. Like the price probably actually goes up because the market like responds more strongly to the supply tightening than they do to the momentary disruption. So this, I believe we have like very strong security properties against 51% attacks of that nature.
That's cool. So when you say that the system will be able to be forked, does that mean that the registry kind of gets duplicated, or does it have to start over?
It's a social consensus process. We don't plan to like build anything into the registry that like would enable that mechanism. That would just be a social consensus process.
Right. And so the idea is to sort of disenfranchise like the large scale bad actor, kind of start again and try to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, because if you fork away from a 51% attacker, so you have like two versions of reality now. In one version, you have an attacker with a majority of tokens, but who is creating like none of the value. And then you have a fork where there's a minority of tokens, but all of the value exists. And so like, this fork of reality ceases to matter.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question for you guys. Things like whitelists, or research or reports or kind of static data, it's the kind of information that once it gets out into the public domain, right? Like you can charge for it once, but once your customer kind of open sources it, it's hard to charge for money for it again, right? So how does this whitelist eventually make it into, the purview of an advertiser that wants to integrate it into their system? And how does do they pay for this?
No, it's free for advertisers and always will be. Yeah, neither Consensus nor MetaX like extracts any revenue or rent from this process. It's on public Ethereum. Like anybody can read from this whitelist.
Wow. Okay, so that's pretty fascinating. So what you're saying is that so because it's free, right? There's not even a barrier to get the whitelist kind of there's a barrier of information to get it installed. The integration is simple for advertisers. Like you cache this thing locally on your bidder, and then you add like one step to your
bidders, or whoever is like whatever server is receiving your inbound bid requests, and you add this extra step. You say, can you do mutual TLS authentication with me? If so, do that step, check your cache, see if they're in the whitelist, and then like continue along the AdChain logic path. Otherwise, continue on whatever non-AdChain logic path. So it's free for advertisers and easy to integrate.
Okay, got it. So from the standpoint of an advertiser, I have a choice. I can go and purchase sort of a traditional whitelist and go through that procedure, or I can connect, through this caching API to a free
or you can get the best whitelist ever for free.
Right. So that's a pretty good value prop, I would say. And it's really interesting that the construction of the whitelist is sort of its own closed, economic or crypto economic system, right? Which creates as you call it, an incentives game or a game theoretic.
Call it an incentive game. Yeah.
Incentive game that basically like tries to increase the quality of the whitelist.
Yep, that's right. It's kind of like, if you think of like proof of work is a brain dead guessing game. Like all you're doing is you're like guessing numbers as fast as you can to try to like produce this thing with a certain number of leading zeros, try to produce a hash. An interesting byproduct of that is we get an append-only ledger. And so like similarly here, you're playing a simple voting game, like relatively brain dead. But as a byproduct, we get this high quality whitelist. So it's like, this is why I think incentive games are interesting. Like we can leverage the power of, in this case, human subjectivity in a decentralized way and like enrich everybody involved in doing so.
That's pretty cool. So as a crypto economic thought experiment, would you say that the voting game is perhaps equivalent to maybe doing like prediction markets on particular domains?
Yeah, so an interesting thing, something that advertisers have asked me about when I talk to them about this is they say, oh, okay, so we get this, it's kind of like a reputation signal from the registry. It's like a binary reputation signal. Are they in or are they out? What if we want to price our CPMs more granularly than that? What if we want to see the difference between like a 3-star listing and a 5-star listing? So like by the nature of, the interoperability of applications on blockchains, you could have like a Gnosis prediction market using the contents of the registry as its oracle. And you could have a prediction market saying, will this website still have a listing in the registry 6 months from now? And, maybe 70% say yes or 30% say yes. And that's like your second layer reputation system, which is like naturally you get that for free because, blockchains work the way they do. Yeah.
It almost feels like you could even have a more dynamic list where you can say, just give me the list that is so high quality. The threshold is that prediction markets have a 95% or greater sort of rating on whether it's going to be a legitimate domain.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I'm okay with like slightly lower quality, like 70% plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And another interesting thing, which I've thought about, is so what ad token holders are incentivized to do when they're doing this diligence process is like do whatever is going to increase demand for ad token. That probably means that there are certain sites like, say Breitbart, like some major brand advertisers, don't want to have their ads served on Breitbart. This is not to say that in the view of some people's subjectivity that Breitbart isn't a high quality site. Maybe like I'm making stuff up. Maybe like the NRA wants to serve ads on Breitbart. So there could be like, a separate registry of like high quality sites, with views that are distasteful to like major brand advertisers. You could like create any sort of subjectively curated registry that you want.
That's pretty cool. So let's talk about sort of the business model of this whole thing, right? You guys as a company, as individuals implementing this system, how does this thing get funded and how does it make money for you guys?
Well, so like I said, we extract no revenue. And whenever I'm talking to people about like how business models work on a blockchain, and this is all just my own opinion, maybe I'm like have more extreme opinions than others, is like you have to forget that revenue exists. Like revenue doesn't exist on a blockchain. If you are like extracting some rent in an arbitrary way, someone is going to fork your code and take that rent out. So like what you want to do, the way that you realize profits building things on blockchains is you want to create markets. So here we are creating a market. We're creating demand from publishers for a thing called ad token. You want to like retain a chunk of the token which describes the market. And if you succeed in instantiating a market where like, you know, people are realizing value from the utility of the token, you can sell your tokens to that market and you realize upside that way. So MetaX launched the token. Consensus was a contractor on the project. MetaX retained a chunk of the tokens. Consensus retained a chunk of the tokens. And you know, if we succeed in instantiating this ecosystem, that's how we'll realize profit down the line.
Mm-hmm. So what drives the appreciation of the token long term?
Demand from publishers. So like at time zero, publishers don't care about AdChain because advertisers don't care about AdChain. At time one, publishers want to be on this registry because advertisers are only serving ads to publishers who are on the registry, and they need to acquire ad token to make these deposits so they can get on the registry. So the fundamental demand comes from publishers who want to be on the registry, and they need the token because they need to be able to incentivize the voters to do the actual diligence.
So that presupposes that kind of the whitelist is itself in demand, such that I, as a publisher, like want to be on it, right?
Yes. And
how does that get valued? Like, what is the value of me being on that list? How much money?
Yeah. So we don't know. So this is why we let token holders vote on all of the parameters of the registry. So at like, you know, relatively early in the registry's life cycle, when there's a relatively small number of advertisers who are experimenting with it, a relatively small number of publishers who are experimenting with it, the deposit price is going to be low because like people are you know, taking a risk on this thing. As advertisers become more interested in it and simultaneously demand to be on the thing goes up, token holders can vote to raise the deposit price such that they are not like overwhelmed by more applications than they can actually do diligence on. So by the nature of that, the registry should be responsive to like the market dynamics of demand for the token at any time.
What is the name of your token?
Ad token. So there's the AdChain registry, which is the thing that you reference, and ad token is the thing you use to play the incentive game.
So is the deposit denominated in ad token, or is it denominated in fiat?
It's denominated in ad token. If you want to like convert it to fiat, you can do that yourself.
Got it. So, and then how long does the process for like changing that deposit parameter typically take?
Yeah, that itself is another parameter. So we'll, you know, initialize it to be like, you know, I don't know, a 2-week challenge period and then a 1-week commit period, 1-week reveal period. I don't know. Maybe that'll be too slow. Token holders will like, you know, vote that to go faster.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So in every, I guess, like cryptocurrency denominated system, you always have that bit of market risk, right? When you have, because you're basically using the token there as a transactional currency, but the price fluctuates relative to fiat and exchanges. So in that 2-week period, you might get slightly cheaper or slightly more expensive to list. But kind of the long-term point is that it is adjustable.
The registry is responsive to market dynamics. If there is some ad token user who wants to limit their exposure to like fluctuations in the price of the token, we don't want to build that complexity into the system. What would be easy for somebody else to build without us having to, you know, cooperate with them at all is like provide some service where like they, you know, proxy ad token on your behalf and like issue you a stable coin in the meantime or something. But we don't need to build that complexity into the AdChain protocol. We want to have like a very Unixy philosophy where we just do like one thing well, and then like people can, you know, pipe and redirect other functions into AdChain.
Gotcha. And is the token supply, is it a fixed token?
Yeah, there's 1 billion ad token.
Okay, so
and
there's no.
I guess there's you know 10 to the 18 nano ad token, so it's divisible down to some crazy huge amount. But yeah, there's 1 billion ad token. It's a fixed supply.
Got it. And my understanding is that you guys had a distribution of this token recently, right? Is that correct?
Yes. We were, as far as I gather, Well, we sold out like 99.99% in one block just due to like a way the contract worked. But I think I've been going around saying we were the first token launch to sell out in one block. Now, if you actually looked at, like token velocity relative to like amount of Ether exchanged, I don't know, but it's a nice little vanity metric to say that we sold out in one block.
Does the token trade on exchanges today?
It is currently trading on Bittrex, and it's also on the decentralized exchanges, of course.
Got it. And what's the valuation of the supply today?
Mark, do you know?
Maybe we can look this up. I should have pulled it up earlier.
Yeah, it's on CoinMarketCap.
Got it. Add token, ADT. Right on. Okay, cool. So it's trading at about 2 cents and a half. With a market cap of 16,787,000.
Yeah, so we're not so high above the launch price at this time.
Got it. And what is the system? So let's talk a little bit about the state of the development of the system. How far along are you guys, and how many guys do you have working on this? Yeah, so like I said, Consensus was a contractor in the like design of the system, and leading up to the launch, we completed that agreement with MetaX. We, from the Consensus side, I can't speak for Meta, we anticipate entering into another agreement with Meta to continue to actually build the thing and deploy it. Unfortunately, until that agreement happens, I can't like share a lot, which has been like personally frustrating for me. However, I'll say there is a timeline in the white paper which was written. And we will certainly do at least as well as that timeline, or I should anticipate that Meta will do at least as well as that timeline. Awesome, cool. So let's zoom out a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about the market opportunity here, and a little bit about the approach. So first, let me just ask the following. So in blockchain, right, there's these kind of various approaches to ad tech. There's some projects which approach from the idea that, well, this like 3-participant model of advertisers, publishers, and viewers, it's kind of a broken model. It creates various inefficiencies, and really what blockchain enables is an advertising-free kind of environment. And what you see is, for example, in the traditional tech world, Medium has been moving away from an ad-based approach into a subscription approach. But then other sites like Steemit say, like, we can use the speculative economics of tokens to bootstrap a system that doesn't have advertisers at all. And then there are other projects such as, Basic Attention Token comes to mind, which says, well, the model is what it is, and we recognize that it's really inefficient. And what we can do is try to use blockchain technology, to make it more efficient. You guys are pretty clearly on that side of the spectrum, but in your own words, like, how do you think about ad tech in terms of blockchain, like kind of going in 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Yeah, so ad blockers are an existential threat to online advertising. Like, there is no incentive, zero incentive for users to view ads. The 3-sided marketplace doesn't exist. There's like, a 2-sided marketplace, and then like users are raw material that get ground up through this privacy destroying mill, and which like feeds this marketplace. So it is imperative, if web advertising is still going to exist 10 years from now, that incentives are created for users to view ads. Like, I run an ad blocker. I'm working on this ad tech project. So this is like, basically the major narrative thrust of what the Basic Attention Token project is trying to do, like create this 3-sided marketplace where users do have incentive to view ads. So one thing that occurs to me when I read the Brave white paper is, I think, so Brave has this thing where like their browser, like injects code on the web page and is able to determine what's a bot and whatnot. This is like exactly the same thing that safety vendors do. I like don't think it is true that the Brave browser will be like better than existing safety vendors in figuring out what's a bot and what's not. Basic attention token winds up, most likely having some sort of economic problem if like a lot of these tokens wind up like getting paid out to bot farms. So there's like natural interoperability between something like AdChain and something like the basic attention token, where any advertiser or exchange which is issuing payments in basic attention token can say you're only eligible for this payment rail, for the BAT payment rail, if you have a listing in the AdChain registry. And that way, like, BAT could do a better job of filtering out payments to bot farms, and like these two things just naturally interoperate. This is what I love about blockchains. Everything naturally interoperates. We don't have to coordinate with one another. The incentives just do the coordination for us. But yeah, so to your original point, I agree. There are existential problems in advertising technology which need to be addressed.
What do you think is the market opportunity for something like AdChain, or AdChain specifically?
I mean, I think the market opportunity is that this becomes like the way of figuring out who you should serve ads to when you don't know who you're serving ads to, such that advertisers only care about serving ads to publishers who are on this list. That's the market opportunity, and you can price that yourself.
Are we talking about billions of dollars, trillions of dollars?
Well, so the total size of the market annually for programmatic advertising, I understand, is around $200 billion a year globally. One thing I think about a lot is that, like, if we're very successful in this and rationalizing the market and like rooting out bot fraud, maybe that gets cut in half, and that's like success for us. So like, say you're left with like $100 billion market. What is the value to a publisher of being able to realize any chunk of that? So that's what the market opportunity is. I don't want to, like, people can do their own analysis on what that might be.
Gotcha. As part of the effort, like I would assume that this is an open source project.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for Meta, but the understanding is that everything will be open sourced. There's no reason to close source anything here.
Okay. And so do you, from the private company side of this, do you anticipate things like, working to get these lists installed, or maybe doing a marketing or partnership effort on behalf of the decentralized network to sort of get it going? Yeah.
So there's a few things we're doing on the consensus side. So one, we're like going out and talking to advertisers and ad buyers and saying, like, we will help you do this for free, because it's a light lift. It doesn't cost consensus much in terms of program or expenditure to like get someone's bidder hooked up to AdChain. So we're doing that, and then simultaneously there is a new working group in the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. This is an advertising industry working group where our mandate is to explore means of mitigating ad fraud using technologies on the public Ethereum blockchain. So things like that, things like ad token. So we'll also be interfacing with large Fortune 500 companies and major advertisers through that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Awesome. It sounds really cool. What do you think is the biggest sort of challenge here? Is the challenge technological? Is it a business challenge?
I'm like, I don't know. Personally, I'm like extremely bullish on AdChain. Like, when I think about it, I'm just like, oh, like this works. Like, it's free for advertisers. Like advertising has such messed up incentives, and like here, the incentives are not messed up for the first time ever. Like, the ad token holders' incentives have no connection to CPMs. Like, their only incentive connection is to quality. So like, it's simple. Like, there's nothing complex here. Like, there's nothing that hasn't been done before in different combinations. So we have work to do, like educating people, like making sure that people know that AdChain exists. I'd say yeah, I mean, I'd say, I don't know. I'm very bullish on AdChain, but obviously I would say that. So do your own research, read our white paper, and see what you think yourself.
Awesome. What is there anything, like, people watching this right now? What should they do? Should they go
Yeah, so
where
we
do they
have
go more
we have
about?
a Slack and a subreddit. So we have reddit.com/r/AdChain, I believe, and then adchain.slack.com. So if they want to, tune in there, we will be posting updates, or Meta will be posting updates as they occur. But there's also a website, adchain.com, that has all sorts of information as well as links to the white paper.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, I think that's all about all I had. Is there anything that you'd like the users to know?
I would say, like, ad token is an incentive game. Like, if you want to play this incentive game, get involved. Like, if you think that you are like able to determine what is a click farm, like what is a low quality site, just using your eyeballs, you can play this incentive game and perhaps do well at it. Those are the people who I am like. It doesn't do anyone any favors if like we have disinterested token holders. What happens then is they eventually wind up getting bought out by active token holders. So yeah, if you're interested in playing the game, hang out with us.
It sounds like, I think game is a good way of describing it, really. It sounds like you're creating a bit of a competitive environment where one can imagine that someone who's really good at machine learning, might write a classifier that automatically...
You are 100% right, yep.
Separates like bad domains from good domains, and then someone will come along and will write an even better AI that does it even better, and may the best AI win.
Yep. And we've talked about, like, there's absolutely the possibility that voting pools will form. There might be liquid democracies and futarchies that hang off of AdChain, and you have representative experts managing votes for token holders, and there could be interesting incentive schemes within those. But yeah, like we were saying earlier, we expect the composition of token holders to change over time and to become more advanced and perhaps professionalized over time. But right now, we're just starting out. We're just a little baby. So if you think that, we're still in the phase, comparing this to proof of work, where you can CPU mine and win a block every once in a while. We're not in the ASIC phase yet. So yeah, if you have eyeballs, you can play this game.
All right, fantastic. So check out adtoken.com, read the white paper, see if you can build an AI that participates in this process, and maybe you can win some tokens. Mike, James, thank you very much for joining us today and telling us about the project, and we look forward to following your progress.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jake. This was fun.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, guys.